Hi mamas, this is the first part of the postpartum series. I'm doing a series of videos to take moms from delivery, where they had this baby in their tummy, their abs are all stretched out, they're in this extension pattern, tight back, maybe, pains of sorts, SI pain, pubic pain, knee, hip pain. And now that the baby's out, everything's trying to readjust and find itself, and muscles that have been lengthened for a long period of time tend to get neurologically inhibited and they turn off. So if your abs have not been working for months on end because of pregnancy, your back has taken over to help stabilize your spine. Breathing is so important when you're working on core stability. And the reason is, if you're in this extension pattern, your back is tight, your abs aren't engaged, you can't feel them work, you have, like low tone, or you just feel like you can't get them to contract, you are stabilizing your spine with your paraspinals, your diaphragm, and your psoas, which is a hip flexor. We want to stabilize your spine with intra-abdominal pressure, which comes from your abs. So think of your core as your multifidi, which are little muscles in your spine, your transverse abs, which is your natural course that goes all the way around ribs to pelvis, and then all the way around your core, and then your diaphragm's on top and your pelvic floor is on the bottom. Now your pelvic floor just went through some trauma if you had a vaginal birth. And even if you did not have a vaginal birth, carrying that baby for 9 months, that's pressure that it's not used to. Now if you had a C-section, you might have more trouble with getting your abs turned back on because they've been cut. So each delivery comes with its own, its own set of problems, but both abs and pelvic floor need to be retrained how to work together and stabilize the system, which is very important postpartum, because if you jump back into running or CrossFit or lifting weights or whatever you're doing for a workout at that magic 6-week, which is not magic by the way, postpartum visit, or 8 weeks, you have no foundation. Your core does not know how to synchronize, muscles are not working together. You need to find that balance and be able to be aware of your position and your movement and be able to control it. And that's so important to just prevent future injury, especially if you plan on getting pregnant again. You don't want to get too ingrained in these patterns and your back's going to get tight again, and you went from postpartum and you just keep doing what you're doing, and now you have another baby and things are already stretched out and already, you're stuck or maybe stuck, and now you're going to repeat that cycle all over again. So this program can be for new postpartum moms to use just as a way of getting that stable foundation, getting that good core control before they go back to working out. Or it can be used for anybody, postpartum, prenatal, whatever, to get in touch with your body and to learn how you need to move and stabilize yourself for good joint mechanics. So today is going to be about inhibition, turning things off. The physical therapy that I practice is postural restoration, and most of my working out in my practice with my patients is based on those ideas, the neuromuscular concepts and muscle balance and how we're moving and how we're positioning ourselves, because that sets us up for, success or failure. So today we're turning off all of the muscles that tend to be tight in that postpartum period, or even prenatal, second, third trimester, when you start to extend because your belly's growing and you have to counter that weight of the baby. So your pelvis drops forward, your back extends, your ribs flare, and you're more like this. And some people come in slouch up here, but they're still extended in their back. So breathing is crucial, and this is why. Your psoas and your diaphragm connect to that high lumbar spine and low thoracic spine. If you are using those two muscles to stabilize your spine because your abs are not doing that for you, they cannot be movers. They either have to stabilize or they have to move. So you can't use them for both purposes at the same time. So if your diaphragm is stabilizing your spine for you, it's not going to be a good breather. It's not going to be moving through that, relaxed dome position and flattening to bring in air. You're going to lose that. So you're going to have to start recruiting your neck and recruiting your back to lift those ribs and get air in. If your psoas is helping you stabilize your spine, it's supposed to be a hip flexor. So if you're using it as a stabilizer and you go to walk or run or do any kind of movements where you need hip flexion, you're going to start cranking on your back, your SI joint, your pelvis, pubic bone, whatever, because it can't be a mover and a stabilizer at the same time. So breathing, getting those ribs on, turning those abs on, because those abs are so important. They bring your ribs down to shut off your neck as a breather. Okay, so your abs and your neck fight over your ribs. Those abs have to pull down to elongate and shut off your neck, which is important, especially if you have migraines and jaw pain and headaches and that kind of thing, or just muscle tension. And the abs are also fighting with the psoas, or your hip flexors, over your pelvis. So the more that they can bring your ribs and pelvis together, the more that psoas is going to lengthen and shut off as a stabilizer, and then it can be a hip flexor for you. So we're going to start by breathing. You're going to lay here, your hands are on your ribs. You need those cues from your hands to pick up on how you're positioning yourself. So try to get those shoulder blades flat, hands on your ribs. Try to keep your shoulders on the ground and not up here. You're going to think of putting that weight through your heels. You're going to roll your pelvis back a little bit. Feel every vertebrae of your spine flat on the floor. Your neck is relaxed. If you want to put a little towel roll, like a hand towel, right under your neck so it's relaxed, you don't want to be uncomfortable there. You're going to get a full exhale. Get all that air out so that we can get it in. So you're going to inhale through your nose. You're exhaling. Those ribs are closing down like you're closing an umbrella. So they're going in, down, and back. You should feel increased pressure, like opposite your chest bone and your low ribs, which is a good thing. As that diaphragm goes up and relaxes on your exhale, that's when your pelvic floor can be more active. We're not going to do active Kegels today, but just keep in mind that those diaphragms, your respiratory diaphragm and your pelvic diaphragm, or your pelvic floor, move together. So on the inhale, they're moving down to let air in. On the exhale, they're moving up to push air out. So you're inhaling through your nose, exhaling all the air out. The longest exhale you possibly can. Feel those obliques, pull those ribs down, and pause for 2 or 3 seconds if you can. Easy inhale and exhale. This sternum, or your chest bone, is so important. It has to move, because if it doesn't move, your neck is not going to shut off. So the more that chest bone goes down, the more your neck is going to be able to relax. Okay? So that is a basic breathing position. It's the easiest position to be in because you can feel contact. You're not supporting yourself. You're not working against gravity. And you're working on that rib movement, which is so important. So you're going to practice this. Try to breathe through the sides of your rib cage so that your abs can keep those front ribs down to shut off your low back. So we want to take that low back that is usually hyperactive and overactive, and we just want to downgrade it a little bit. So pushing through your heels and rolling your pelvis back, you should feel a little bit of hamstring. If you can't, put your feet up on something like a chair or the couch and push down a little bit as you roll your pelvis up, and you should feel those hamstrings on the back of your thighs engage. Those hamstrings and those abs have to work together to stabilize your thorax or your rib cage and your pelvis. So you want them working together. So as you breathe here, the only thing that should be moving is your rib cage. You want to make sure your neck stays quiet. You want to train your shoulders to relax. You don't want this like, you know, you're really, you know, engaging your neck on those inhales. You don't want that. Everything should be relaxed except those ribs are moving out and in. Think of an umbrella, okay? So you want to get a sense of that movement because you're going to want to be using that movement when, you know, during the day, all the time, when you're sitting, when you're working out, you know, and we breathe differently depending on what we're doing, but we want that mobility. We want those ribs to move on the spine. So if you inhale and your spine lifts off the mat, you need to focus on that and keep every vertebrae pressed into the mat, not hard, but just on the mat as those ribs move, so that your spine is not moving, it's only your ribs moving, and that is good breathing. That's going to help shut off that diaphragm and that psoas as stabilizers so that you can move them, or you can use them as movers. So the next position you're going to be in is you're going to take those arms out to a T. So this is a good one to shut off that chest. You're really going to try to anchor down those low ribs with your abs. So make that connection between your pelvis and your rib cage. And you're going to try to just let air come into that chest and turn off those pecs. Trying to get those shoulder blades flat on the floor is huge. It's a big deal because that will allow your pecs to relax or stretch a little bit, okay? So you're inhaling through your nose, trying to inhale out of your rib cage and then close that rib cage. Now if you don't feel any, some people will feel a stretch right here because they're so tight in their pecs, especially postpartum, or if you're still nursing or having to rock baby all the time, you're in that forward shoulder position, you're going to get really tight in your chest. So if you don't feel a stretch here, you can lay on a blanket, like a quilt, 2 to 4 inches, probably 2 or 3 inches, and put it like right under your shoulders to your hips so that your head drops back a little bit if you can tolerate it. That'll help shut off your neck, and you're gonna let those hands drop lower than your shoulders. So basically you're putting it under your torso so that your hands can drop back and give those pecs a little bit more stretch. So you're gonna breathe like that. You wanna do 4 or 5 breaths, and then, 4 times. Let's just say that, somewhere around there. Whatever, you've got to tap into how you feel, and you just really want to make the breathing work for you, using that air to inhibit muscles. So we're trying to channel that air where you're tight. So if you really clamp those lower ribs down with those abs, the air is directed up here to help shut off those pecs. Then you're going to go into a Y, or you can even go straight up, keeping every vertebrae down. The more you get those ribs down, the more stretch you're going to feel. Don't let your neck tense. You should feel some stretch in here. Now as you exhale, if you force that exhale and you feel pressure in your pelvic floor, you got to ease up on your abs a little bit. That means your pelvic floor isn't strong enough to withhold that pressure that's created by contracting your abs. So you need to even out the abs and the pelvic floor, and everyone's going to be a little different there, but you should never feel pressure on your pelvic floor or bulging. That you don't want to encourage that because your pelvic floor is telling you it's not strong enough for that, so you have to ease off that pressure, decrease your weight if you're working out, decrease the impact or the demand of the activity until you can control your pelvic floor and lift it to stabilize you. So that's an important point. You don't want to be working so much abs that you're causing too much pressure going on down on your pelvic floor. So those are the positions that you can work on breathing laying on your back. And like I said, just do 4 breaths 4 times or 5 breaths 5 times. So hopefully after a few minutes of just practicing that breathing, you're more aware of your rib movement, muscle activation, your position. That is key to being able to control it with higher demand or more challenging exercises. Stay balanced.